I'm going to tell you a story and then you're going to jump in, okay?
Perfect.
So this is probably what year, actually you can jump in right now. What year did we meet?
I believe it was 2 years ago now,
Yeah,
2019.
two years ago.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, at a party across the hall, you were at and in the condo where we were living, and then we had a conversation, and that's how I wanted to get this started this way because that conversation is really important to this whole story, Mike. So I'm not trying to give you like all this props and all this accolades, but it's true. And one of the disadvantages of having really interesting conversations with people in business is when you can't get them through, when you can't get something through to the other business owner because they're trapped inside their own way, right? And
Right.
then what you were identifying was that in your history, no one has a strategy to running their business first, right? Like, in other words, you come in and you find business owners have never had a strategy since day one. So you can understand why, if you're going to try to analyze something in terms of workflow or operations to like drive the revenue line, like if they don't have a goal structure at all, then they have no idea where they're going. And so they're just accidentally running their business. Would you
Yeah,
agree?
yeah, 100%. So,
Right?
so you're exactly on the money in the sense that they're generally lacking two things. It's usually um, lacking a goal and a plan to achieve that goal, right? So, me as a
Mm.
marketing executive and somebody who's running various marketing campaigns and programs for people, a lot of the time I would be kind of dropped into the middle of the battlefield, going, "Hey, figure this stuff out." So,
That's what you were saying.
I really truly believe that marketing is a big component of any business. It's arguably one of
Mm.
the most important because it touches on so many functional areas of the business in the sense that um, if you're having supply chain issues because your sale is going, to bananas and selling too much,
Mm.
really, I think a lot of the time the marketing efforts uncover a lot of weak spots in the business. And to your point, I have had the fortune and misfortune of being shown those things because I've learned a ton, but it's also left me exactly where you said, realizing that a lot of business owners, to your point, do not have a plan, right? They don't know
No.
their goals, or their goals are kind of fuzzy, but they wake up
Yeah.
every day and they're
Yeah.
just putting out fires playing whack-a-mole instead of doing something that is
Yeah.
moving
Well,
towards those goals.
put it this way: they do have the only goal that they have is money, right? Like
Well,
a
yeah.
lot of a lot
Yeah.
of, like that's like the easiest one. But the problem I have is that coming from like an operational standpoint, think about it this way. First off, Mike, this is no filter, right? So you can say whatever you want
Okay, great. Good to know.
about
Just
anything,
making sure. Yeah,
just
yeah.
because this is supposed to be cathartic, okay?
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, like I think that the reason why I'm doing this is so that there can be a catharsis and confessional for the professionals I've met along my journey, and they can say it as it is. Because what we're going to do together is where I'm just going to go right to the point here. Is this channel is going to be called The Perfect Business. So our conversation, what I found was there's operations and then there's marketing, but there's strategy, et cetera. And then we find all of these points to how they all connect. What I find is I'm sure this is why we're having this conversation. This is why I want to do this, is that they're disconnected. All of these pieces are disconnected to a business owner. They basically
Yes.
gravitate towards their expertise only. So if their expertise is, say, sales, well, then the business probably doesn't have a problem selling, right? Whatever the
Yeah.
deliverable is. If their business is somehow, but marketing is interesting because it's not all marketing. What it is it's actually having a brand, right? And the
Yes.
brand is how is basically what's necessary, which is where everything falls apart because you're just basically building a business to exist. And you don't know who your competitors, who your competitors are, but what you're doing is you're just basically running with like no plan, straightforward,
Yeah.
and so I wanted to read this to you. So check this out. This is what's going to be so funny. This is going to be so provocative, Mike. So what I did was I opened up in dictionary.com the definition of perfect because I know that this is going to come up. So it's conforming absolutely to the description or definition of an ideal type. The second definition, excellent or complete beyond practical or theoretical improvement.
Beyond practical, I think
Yeah.
is the key phrase to take away from that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the idea here is, let's say that there is a perfect way of doing things. and let's just disseminate everything along the way, construction of the business, all of it, app choices, team, communication strategy, protocol, social media, you name it. And then we'll build it together. Okay. Now I'm going to not ask you to be here every week, but I would like to say that you of course can come and do this whenever you want, because I think you're going to enjoy it a lot, because it's going to work
I'd love to. Yeah.
This is like the first time people could be spokespersons for the SaaS world, right? Like the places where we can go, like here, will be very, very practical for business owners, right? Like, I don't want to like offer any solutions that are not going to do exactly what they want, which is to the right of the equal sign. That's always my joke, by the way. So like I say, because it's a formula. So what's at the right of the equal sign? So if you know what's right, like say, for example, it's plus 5 million net. I don't care. That's an answer. But if you don't know that the plus 5 million net to that side of the equal sign, we can't work backwards to find out what's on the left side of the equal sign.
Yes,
see what I mean?
exactly.
Like how easy is, and you know what? It's even easier. Like say, for example, boat. You could just put equals boat, or like equals traveling forever, or equals whatever. I don't care. But somewhere in that, you're going to have to figure out all of these pieces. And I think that the reason why I wanted to do this with you first is because of the brand problem, and also because of COVID-19 and quarantine, which is where I'll tell you, you and I started having 1 hour conversations on Fridays. Okay. Yeah. And I looked forward to it, because all I wanted to do was unravel bad business and joke about stupid decisions that people make all day and every day for no apparent reason other than they have no supervision of how to do anything. It's like any business owner can run with an idea, like a deliverable forever. And it's almost like along the way they pick up work. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, that's fair. It's like, oh, how did I get here? They wake up and then all of a sudden there's just a trickle of business, and it's like, it makes it seem like the idea is valid, but to your point, it also, I think, doesn't represent how underdeveloped some of those approaches are. So to your point, it's almost like it's accidental. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
It's accident. Like I make a joke, and this is a friend of mine, Meg Button, had mentioned that we made up a term, accidentally successful entrepreneurs. Now there's now like the word, I don't like the word entrepreneur, obviously, because I think that all it means is don't tell me what to do. Right? Like I think it makes people have like a little ecosystem around themselves so that they can, hide behind a logo so someone doesn't tell them what to do. That's like a part of it. I'm sure that someone will give me an argument. Feel free, tweet it. I don't care. But that like idea means that's why it breaks apart when you start to scale, right? Like when you don't know where you're going, you don't know how to do it, you're just guessing. And this is why this is going to make people very, very probably upset. But at the same time, so what? This is real. Okay? This is part of the reason why people don't change their operational, business operations, or they don't add any ad spend or marketing, or they only say they have a website, they don't know what it's doing, etc. And the reason for is just as you said, if they find out what they could have been doing now, and they apply that in the past, well, they're going to feel real stupid, right? Yes. Because all they're going to do is they're going to be like, that means that I could have retired earlier if I started adjusting this earlier. I could have made more revenue or whatever, or everything could have been better, but they didn't. So when you start to apply analytical metrics to like a system they already have, and you advance a modern business, they look backwards and they're like, oh my God, that's $10 million I lost in 10 years, and worked like a fucking dog.
Well, and it's exactly, I was just going to say, piggybacking off the work like a dog, it's not even, I could have made millions more, I could have whatever. It's, that cost me my first marriage. That cost me my kids, seeing my kids grow
respect.
up, and now my self-respect is another one.
Kids' respect. My
kids' respect. But it's one of those things, right, where it's like you look back on all those things, and it is very, very uncomfortable to lift those rocks and look at our failures and look where those things have gotten
Dude.
us. But it's when you look at those things and acknowledge them but don't do anything about it, that is when you fail. It's not the recognition that you failed in the past, because that in itself is a cathartic experience that actually propels you forward. It's progress. It's when you see that and you have that progressive thought, but then you say, hey, I could be doing things differently, but I'm going to continue to do those things poorly. That's where I have almost zero tolerance, right? Because it's like, you can't acknowledge that there's a problem and do nothing and then expect a different outcome, right? It's like things have to change.
Yeah, they do. They do. Like, I will say that that it's obviously this attachment to value, like time value or whatever I call it, right? Like, then when you start talking about outcomes and hours, right?
Yes.
Like, when people do work, they have a value to the work that they do. So if something's only one click, they don't feel like it's as valuable if they work for 60 minutes, say, for example, right?
Yeah.
So they're working out these equations in their head when they start feeling like that's how the business is driving itself.
Yes.
Now, throw e-commerce into this mix, and that's probably the beginning of the digital animosity that I like to describe. So digital animosity to me is when business owners that started businesses basically do almost nothing and have been doing almost, and like, it's all based on like just an e-commerce site, Shopify, whatever. And they're building their startup, whether it's a SaaS products are the same way, for massive scale, right? And it's outcomes. It's not hours, right? The hours are there when you're building these things, but as far as the deliverable, they want to do it instantaneously for as much money as they can get for it, right? And so if you look at someone that is like built a business where they wore every hat. They wore every hat. Well, if they're wearing every hat, they're working like 16 hours a day. Sure, you got a holdings company with $10 million in it, but that took you 25 years. And also, you have no idea how much you could have made. And it's like, I think that's the disturbing factor, is that if you knew you could have doubled that 5 years ago, like, you just stay away from you stay away from modern design. Modern business is not for you, because it's just going to change how you perceive yourself, right?
Yeah. And oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
Yeah,
that's why you're here.
I was just going to say, it is very uncomfortable, and I think it's one of those things where I think it's really easy to stick your head in the sand, but I think it's also easy to come fully the other way if you haven't realized, kind of what's possible. It is fully, you are capable as a person of swinging the other way and understanding what's happening, right? So I'll give you an example of, I worked in an agency in the past, and we had a client who they were talking about the contracts, right? So it's the chicken and the egg problem. Is the client paying for the work to get done in the contract, or is the client paying for the outcome of what the contract work is promising, right? So it's a very interesting kind of business philosophy question, if you want to call it that.
Sure,
right?
It is.
And you realize that, of course, right? It seems like if you get an outcome with very little work, it's almost like, well, I cheated, or how did I get here, right? But I also, and I had two people who were arguing about this. One person was like, no, our job is
hold on. I got to mention, got to mention, that's what makes this funny. Like, what you're going to say next. Two people arguing
about this. And it's like, hey guys, we have work to do. But anyway, so we have a contract, and one person is saying, hey, you need to do the work that's outlined in the contract, which me, I'm an executive. I of course agree with that. I rarely ever want to deal with the legal team. I avoid them at all costs. So I just say, do what's in the contract, right? It's easier.
Sure.
The other person's going, well, no, it's not about that. It's they're paying us this retainer because we are promising them an outcome, right?
Yeah.
So his argument, and I agreed with him, and I said, if you could do all this work, and this was in the SEO context, actually, so search engine optimization, which is a lot of work. It's very difficult. It's extremely competitive. It's an uncertain outcome, which is the one thing people don't love, right? You could spend a year doing it.
And it's also a cesspool. It is an
absolute cesspool. Yeah,
it's a cesspool of the inadequate, right?
Yes.
And the problem is that if they know how to, they can monopolize on the formulas, even though it's not a good service, right?
Exactly. 100%.
They're
they make money. They don't care. Yeah. The deliverable is, oh no, we said we were going to
Yeah.
make you this many articles, and we did, so therefore give us our money, right?
Yeah.
Versus
Oh,
those articles in themselves were not the point. The point was those articles
yeah.
were going to drive a business outcome, right? So this
Of
guy's,
course.
and to keep this story short, this guy's,
Sure.
the one person on the one side was saying we fulfill the contract. The other one on the other side was, well, even if we do something that's a little bit different and maybe outside of the scope, and now we're getting into legally treacherous territory here, but because it's out of the scope, we're going to do something else, but it's going to have a better business outcome. At the end of the month, right? When the client goes back to review, it happens. They don't care that you did these articles because at the end of the day, if it doesn't achieve that goal, then it's right. So this guy's to sum this up. He goes, if you could either do these articles, right, for this client, or you could go out and walk down Yonge Street holding a sandwich board, and that would get you more results, right? The client is going to go grab the sandwich board and hit the street. They're not going to say, oh no, the terms of the contract dictate you need to make me this many articles.
Well, I mean,
it's about the outcome, right?
It's about the outcome, but of course there's brand in there too. So let's be honest. Like I think that is the farce of a lot of this, is that people are so exposed to social media right now that they want their business to like feel like that Silicon Valley cultural value of a startup. And so what happens is they get behind their brand, but it's like impossible to do that kind of thing on their own. And so it just turns into this like creature, this like Frankenstein monster of a business that like they just basically were running with, oh, I'm going to spend this amount of money on a logo, et cetera. I'm like, yeah, but what about your sales pipeline? What are you using for, your CRM,
everything
et cetera?
else. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that brings me to this, by the way. So this is how we're going to do this, or I'm going to do this too. So I love writing stuff down. If anybody knows me, it's crazy. I'm digital, except for the analog, which doesn't make any sense. So I like to write, I brought down these cards. So the first thing I'm going to mention is CRM. That's what I'm going to write down. So this is how this works. Is every time you say something, I say something, guest says something, I'm going to write it down so that I have something to go off of. So I do want to mention that that's probably one of the best things to talk to someone about first when they're in a business is, do you use a CRM?
Yeah.
Which is absolutely ridiculous if you don't. Absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, sorry. Can I add something to that? I think the fact that we even have to ask that as people are trying to help businesses is itself ridiculous. 100%.
Well, here's the thing. This is almost like a help channel as well. Okay, like this should open up people's eyes to these things that are just accepted by people like yourself and by me. And the reason why is because it saves time. And how about this? If you imagine that your business has like leaks, and I say this all the time, I say leaky data. This is where you're cheating yourself, is if you're not collecting all the data, then you're cheating yourself on some revenue somewhere, right? Whether that revenue is in time or whether that revenue is in money. Yeah. And so by not keeping track of something at the start, and I'm not talking project management, I'm just talking a CRM, that is how you start that transaction. And I'm going to go in a little rabbit hole right here. So I host with Google Workspaces. Basically, it's like G Suite or, Google for Business, whatever you want to call it. And as well as there's like two ecosystems. There's Microsoft 365 and Google. Well, I early on thought to myself, I was like, I don't want to keep track of any contacts. So how do because Google has contacts, right? It also contacts.google.com or google.com/contacts, right?
Yeah.
And so that is actually, you connect to that natively with applications just to dump in, to reference these contacts. So you see already, now I'm creating a universal contact database that's accessed by my phone through Google by the CRM. You see? These little tiny details are how I don't have to worry about looking for anything. It's already all connected. Now that is where the automatic technologies come in. So that's like the layer that I don't want to lose the audience on. But if I mention software solutions, or you mention them, I'm kind of moving into the area where that is the solution, right? If only certain brands are mentioned, then that's how we build the business that we're talking about, the perfect business. Now, I ask you this. You're in business, you're incorporated, and you're basically a VCMO or a CMO, and you're working for an institution, and you've worked for other people in the past. Time or money? Mike, what do you what is it for you? Time or money? Like,
I
do you
think
like the free time that it gives you because you're a talented person? So you could say you were billing at $500 an hour, right? So you if you enjoy that billable, then you could do 10 hours of that. Well, that's $5,000 of billable, right? If you were $500 an hour. Or would you prefer that you only worked 1 hour a day? You know what I mean? Which is yours?
yeah. I think honestly, and no disrespect to anyone who would say something different. I think if you don't choose to prioritize time, you're a fool.
Yeah,
Only
I
because
agree.
there is no other. The well has a limited supply, right? Money
Yeah,
comes and goes. You can always make more. You can always lose
yeah,
more money. Time is the one thing that is finite by definition, and
yeah.
you can waste it, but you can't create it,
Yeah,
right?
and here's the thing. Here's the thing. This is where it gets interesting. If you want to whiteboard your mortal life, like there's only so much time you have to do certain things. So that means that your formula, your business formula, whether or not you love working yourself to the fucking bone or not, or whatever you like, should have time in it. And if there's
Yes.
wasted time
Yeah.
in some sort of operations in your business, that's you ripping yourself off,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
because like all you're doing is you're just taking away time that you only have a finite amount of, to like do something that could be automatically done for you, just because you're not willing to change to that new modern whatever, that new
Well,
operational modern workflow or whatever.
exactly. And I think there's a word that when you and I had started discussing this, you really, and it stuck with me, and I've used it several
Probably you
times
said a
since then.
lot.
Yeah. No. Something you said.
Oh,
Low value work, right? I
oh
think
yeah.
there is this absolute obsession with low value work where it's like, oh well, part of my daily routine is to spend 2 hours transferring cells from this spreadsheet into this spreadsheet,
Oh
right?
God,
And
don't.
you go right. So don't get too upset. But it physically pains me as well because again,
Oh my God.
I was
My
a
God.
scrappy young self-taught internet marketer. I worked my way up from nothing. A lot of my job in the past was literally taking this in this spreadsheet and moving it to this other spreadsheet.
Yeah.
That obsession with low value work is easy and it's comforting, but it's
Hmm.
really not, it doesn't serve that greater purpose. And going back to your question about time or money, it's like if I
Hmm.
could spend 2 or 3 hours in one shot and $5,000 to solve a problem that costs me 5 hours every week.
Oh
Not
yeah.
only that, 5 hours
Oh
every
man.
week, I'd pay 50 grand, I'd pay 100 grand to solve that problem. The problem
Like,
is we are told that, oh, you can't do that. You just have to do this hard work, and grinding is a virtue. And again, it is to some degree, but there's
mm.
also a point where you are just pissing away your most valuable resource, which is time.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And how about I just add what the business that I started, which is now like a modernization agency, right? The automated method. Here's what I got to tell you of what I've learned over the past year is that once you build out like an ecosystem, a perfect ecosystem, like, and I'm saying like, let's say small and medium business. And here's where this is going to get fucking awesome. There are only so many types of industries. There are only so many markets, and therefore there are only so many app stacks, which I would
Yes.
consider a stack of apps that all work together either natively or integrate, through like applications like Zapier. And if we lose anybody, it's okay. I'll just do more posting. And then what happens is that system is now the business, right?
Yes.
What you're going to do is you're going to add the strategy and you're going to add the deliverable, whether it's a service or a product. I don't care. You're going to add the association with the website, with the social media. You're going to have some sort of story. These things are so part of it, and they're just rolling out, connected to the app stack, connected to whatever the goal is. It's all connected, but it's not in like there's only so many. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like once you start, that's what I learned personally over a year is that there's only so many, and I haven't broken out. I haven't had to break out of that ecosystem at
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
right? So like if you go to a business owner and you go, what does your business do? That's all you need to know, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because like then you can go, well, you're not the only one doing it first, okay? Second of all, it's been done before and by someone that's done it better than you probably. So what's your benchmark? Do you want to find out? Let's data pool. you know? And if we do the benchmarking, here's the thing. You might find out that your workforce is too large, right? So if your workforce is too heavy, that means that you can scale back. Now, I don't want to be the human deleter, but I mean, automatic technologies have been doing that since its beginnings. So it's like now you got to look at these HR connections to your marketing, to everything. And the savings will be your time, right? Like it doesn't make any sense how people are so their ego is so fierce that they think that they built the only business that does what they do. You know, and I'm not saying that there aren't new unicorn businesses out there. Of course there are. There wouldn't be these SaaS products we use every day like Amazon and Uber, et cetera, that go right to the moon, right? But if you look at some of the traditional modeling and even I would consider some e-commerce businesses traditional now because of how long they've existed.
Yeah.
Well, if you're basically going and you're engineering everything yourself, like if you are building it yourself without asking anybody or doing any sort of like consulting or hiring people like yourself or the automated method or myself, you're crazy. Like, you're absolutely nuts because you're going to start this process and learn halfway, like from here to a 10-year gap between, so 5 years, let's say, that, I could have been doing it differently. And I'm like, yeah, you could have been doing it differently. And you also lost $2.5 million. Oh, and
cherry on top. Well, and also, sorry, not even that. So I have come across guys in my time, and I've been, or guys, girls, whatever. I use guys colloquially, but
it's okay. I mean,
it's a habit I'm trying to break because I realize, like, for example, one team that I manage right now is primarily female. So every time I say guys, I'm just like,
yeah, I catch myself too.
I started using y'all, so I sound a bit southern, but I love it. It works, you all. Anyway, so I've encountered business people and owners, etc. They come up to, and something you said really just struck a chord with me. This idea that
I hope so. That's why we're here.
Yeah, right. They're not attached to the outcome as much as they should be. They're attached to your point of them, like, oh, look at this thing that I built. Right? It's almost like like being a car builder, right? Or I'm going to build cars for drag racing, right? I know little to nothing about drag racing, but the analogy will still work. It's saying, hey, I built this car and it's a piece of shit, but it's okay, but it kind of works, right? My goal is to build the fastest car, not to build a car, right? So in service to that goal, I should be breaking down that car every time, seeing, can I make it lighter? Can I make it faster? Can I make it handle better? Can I increase the horsepower? All of this stuff.
You're hitting it, man.
Right? And it's like, and these people, they get in love, they fall in love with like, oh, this is the first car. I literally had a guy one time tell me, we can't change this process because I spent 12 hours building this spreadsheet for this. So I'm like, dude, this is literally hurting your business. And this guy, it was an impressive spreadsheet. And I'm talking like formulas, multiple sections interacting with each other.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's a work of art.
It was a work of art. And I love spreadsheets personally. Like I really do, because I think they're useful tools to figure out things. But as an operational, functional linchpin or connector between things, absolutely not. You need something like Zapier or something like that to connect these things, Airtable, etc.
Well, you just need a database. You need a database.
Exactly.
Like, let's be honest, it's a spreadsheet. It's called a spreadsheet.
Exactly.
Not a database.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is people don't realize spreadsheets and databases.
Well, it's got rows and columns. It's Battleship, just like everything else.
They're virtually the same thing. But my point is that, like, to me, that short-sighted. Well, first of all, we're talking about the sunk cost fallacy at that point, which is a logical.
See, this is why you're here. Sunk cost here. Explain that.
Okay. So the sunk cost fallacy, right, is I'll put this in terms of dating, because I think everyone has probably experienced something bad in dating in their past.
It's an easy one too.
Yeah, sunk cost fallacy is I started dating this person. They're really great in the beginning. We really hit it off. I thought they were the one, et cetera, et cetera. Now I've spent 10 years with them. I'm realizing, they're really not that nice of a person. I kind of don't like them that much. We don't really have that much in common. And not only that, I'm actually wasting my time. I hate this person. I hate myself. So clearly you would think at that juncture, people are going to go, hey, yeah, I'm going to pull shoot. I'm going to get out of here. I'm done. I've wasted enough time.
Exactly.
What human beings do, because we are such poor logicians, we are such poor, we have such a bad ability to like rationalize things, especially when things like emotion like love, etc., is involved. Instead
Oh,
of
I
leaving
get it.
that person, right, because you think, hey, every minute I've spent up until being with this person is a waste of time. So you
Mhm.
would think at that point, you would say, I'm no longer going to invest and throw my time and money away. What we do is we actually double down and we think, oh, well, the last 10 years I've spent with this person, I can't just throw that away. So
Yeah.
because I've sunk that cost, I'm going to continue to sink more cost into this,
Yeah.
even though objectively I know it's the wrong thing. So sunk
Yeah.
cost fallacy is one of the, if there was like a top three diseases plaguing business in today's day and age, sunk
Yeah.
cost fallacy is something that you absolutely, as a business owner, consultant, manager, whatever, you have to disabuse yourself and recognize when you're making that error in judgment of saying sunk costs is not saying, hey, I spent 12 hours building the spreadsheet. Yeah, the spreadsheet's great. I'm really proud of you. Pat you on the head
Mhm.
and give you a treat and send you on your way. But ultimately, at the end of the quarter, or the end of the year, when we look back at your numbers and things suck, you go, oh well, they kind of suck because we had to work things through the spreadsheet, right? So there,
Mhm.
you've in what's actually hurting your goal and detrimental to your ultimate goal, you have facilitated not getting there because you were so attached to this thing that you wasted time on. And it's always uncomfortable. The last thing I'll say about sunk cost fallacy is anyone
Yeah.
listening to this, please examine your own reasoning to nip this in the bud, because I even catch myself doing it sometimes too. Well, I
Mhm.
already planned this thing and I was going to do it and we already put all these ducks in a row. Knowing when to cut your losses and move on is such a critical skill in business,
Oh.
that being attached to the old way of doing things, being attached to the old systems, taking pride in an old broken system, that's like
Mhm.
building the shittiest drag racer ever and saying this thing barely limped over the finish line. Oh, my job's done. Wipe my hands and it's all good. It's like, no, you got to
Yeah.
get up and you got to do
Yeah.
the next iteration and evolve
Yeah.
and grow, right? So
Yeah.
I
No,
really
I would like.
find evolution, progress, and growth is completely opposite of the sunk cost fallacy, which is what a lot of people engage in.
Okay, so here I will share something with you that'll be very enlightening. This will be enlightening for the audience. Technology that they adopted immediately early on is the reason why they don't think that there's another alternative. So
Yes.
when happens is, say for example, email is a perfect example, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. I will
Don't get
spend a
me
whole.
started on email. Yeah,
Oh
I'm not an
man,
email guy. Yeah.
don't I will go for a day. I will stream for a day about
Yeah.
email. I have a surplus of ridiculous stories. Anyway, the thing is that whole once the technology solved a problem, it was it enlightened the business owner to the point where they were like, "That's great. I didn't have that before, and that does this. Oh, that's amazing." But somewhere along the lines, they didn't think that every day something like email is coming out every day, every week, every month, every year. So if you've only been doing whatever you think it was back in 2001 and it's 2021 and you haven't, and see, the thing is, though, maybe the structure of these applications kind of changes, but the protocol is what you're just doing. You're just imitating the same thing over and over and over again. And then
Yeah.
your competitor is faster, leaner, stronger because they don't do that because they're using tools that are far superior to the tools that you have built with your business with,
Yes.
and and
Yes.
and that's it. And the
Yeah.
thing is, though, so now you just keep scaling based on what that app's limitations are. You're only
Yes.
scaling your business based on the limitations of the technology. That's it. And
Yeah.
if you don't get that, that's why you just hire. That's why you're like, oh, we're busy. They insert human here, insert human here. And I'm like, do you know your workflow? Do you know the time metric of workflow between each of the connecting steps? Do you
Yeah.
know what that means? Cost margining is one thing. Time margins is a whole other category
Yeah,
that
dude.
you
It's
know.
and what people don't know, and not only that, like I think, and I deal with this a lot. I've worked in agencies. Marketing, I think, is inherently a little bit chaotic. It's people have no concept of how long things take, right?
But they
So
know
for them,
that you're absolutely right. They have no benchmark.
yeah, there's
That's
no benchmark, and sorry,
no
there's no
benchmark.
benchmark of what it currently takes. And so because they don't know the benchmark of the current time investment of certain things, they'll never know. Um, for example, where it could be, right? It's
No,
say,
they don't
hey,
know the
this thing
unit.
takes us
They
10
don't
hours.
know
They
the.
don't exactly. It's unit economics essentially.
They have no
Individual
idea.
things saying like, hey, this thing takes X amount of time, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm.
So I think that this is the problem: is that people fundamentally don't understand. And they also, well, and there's one thing too, is it's one thing, and I made a lot of businesses who are cavalier about
Oh,
expenditures
good word.
their money, right? And saying, hey, yeah, that thing costs X amount of money, but we're going to risk it, right? We have deep
Mm.
pockets, we have a treasure chest we're sitting on. But that they treat time the same way, which to me is the cardinal sin, because it's like you can
Yeah.
get money back, you can never get your time back, ever,
Yeah.
ever.
I mean, and it's the. I don't know if everybody thinks that all entrepreneurs think they're immortal, or that they're only going to be,
Dude, that is a really good point.
or
100% they do.
or
Yeah.
that they're going to reproduce an exact version of themselves just to insert human here, and then that's the idea of
Yeah.
that's their legacy business. They're like, oh, I'll just
Yeah.
keep inserting another clone of myself right here,
Yeah.
and
I'll
I'm
just
like,
hand this
well,
down to my son who's going to absolutely
yeah.
hate me. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. There's like a lot of avenues and layers and stuff like that. And I can tell you that when you're like, if you were to put all of the corporate areas together and you were to look at it, this is why I am going to have to like put this out there, but there is a such thing as shared business intelligence. But the thing is though, you got to know what business intelligence is first to understand
Yes.
what that is.
Yeah.
And that's why I always talk about the only way, and this is like I could do a live podcast all the time. I will always refer to ROI. I don't care what you do. I don't care. I swear, it's like you need to know what your return on investment is, and what return on investment has in the formula is time.
Yeah.
So like if
Yeah.
you're willing to, so all you're doing is all of your formulas are all rogue all over the place and they don't have time in it. Like
Yes.
literally time is in physics in almost every single goddamn formula. Right?
Yeah.
So your business doesn't have time. It doesn't matter. And the way that you'll operate with time is it done yet? That's all that you know about
Yeah.
time. You
Yes.
do not know. And by the way, take this one home. The bandwidth vampires in your business. You
Yeah.
have no idea. You have no bandwidth quality control. I can say that I'm even guilty of being a bandwidth vampire, even like in certain things, just because when I'm delegating things around, I realize I might be spinning them up in a fashion that maybe is the other side isn't prepared for, because I'm thinking for myself. So what I do is I project that I want it to be for me, and then the other
Yes.
side their bandwidth goes through the roof for me. Now you shouldn't do that, but that's because there's a protocol breakdown between me communicating with a team or
Yes.
myself communicating with, or whatever. And that protocol breakdown is where there's a huge leak. Like literally, you can quote me, that's probably how you can immediately tighten up a business operation. Like, and I'm talking here, part of the reason why I want to do this channel is because I don't want all these businesses to go bankrupt. They're going to fold, they're going to go bankrupt, and they're not agile, they can't pivot, they have no idea what's coming next because they had no projections. And their only failure there is because they just kept ignoring what technology can provide them, which is what I call crystal ball tech, and it's all there.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
forward seeing projections requires that your data is clean.
Yeah.
And
Well, Yeah. Well, and that your data is clean, but that you are collecting data at all, right? Like
well,
that.
that's what I meant by saying that.
Yeah. That you start with anywhere. And I also think too, just on
Yeah.
that point, like there's this. I find it really. I don't know if it's ironic or it's not ironic. It's unfortunate and coincidental maybe, but the fact that in our everyday lives, right, people are so quick to apply technology to every problem, right? Even problems that aren't even problems. If you look at electric cars were a problem, right? Internal combustion engines, very inefficient, very dirty, etc. Electric cars make sense, right? So people will accept a paradigm shift in something not as mundane. Driving is a big part of a lot of people's lives, but it's relatively mundane as a car owner, right? To the car owner, it doesn't matter if your car is an internal combustion engine or if it's a Tesla with an electric motor. It doesn't matter because you're still getting to where you want to go. So people are very, very eager almost to adopt those things. Now, when you switch the lens and the focus to business, it is astounding to me how reluctant people are to try new things, apply technology. It's like everything in our life is getting better and more advanced, but then you have people who are so obstinate and stubborn that it's like, well, no, I don't want to try this new Airtable thing because I have this spreadsheet with 160,000 rows and columns in it that, you know, I made 7.5 years
You're
ago.
going to be hashtag spreadsheet. I'm going to have to
Hashtag
tag.
spreadsheet.
I'm going to have to
and
tag.
then for the
stream.
record, everybody, I love spreadsheets. They're amazing. They're great. They're super useful. They're a good way to think. I think they're a good thinking tool. But
Well,
it just
they're a
blows
visual
my
tool.
mind that they're a visual tool for sure.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind that people are so eager. We live in the most technologically advanced civilization, I mean, as far as we know, in the universe right at this point, or at least the most technically advanced society that humans have ever built. Right. But for arguably the most important part of people's lives, which is their business, especially if you're a small business or medium, even large business owner, to sit there and be a Luddite in that sense. And I don't know if Luddite is necessarily a pejorative term or what that was, you know.
Hashtag Luddite.
Hashtag Luddite. They're the ones who destroyed the printing press because they thought it was going to put printsmiths out of work back in the day when the printing press was made. So anyway, Luddite's saying, hey, we don't want these, right? And I'm not saying people are doing it because they prefer to do the old way. I think it's born out of fear. It's born out of fear and uncertainty. And this is something that I also see with the teams that I manage is like people don't want to put their neck out there and put their neck on the line rather and say, hey, I'm going to try this new thing. I'm going to try this new system. I'm going to try this thing because it's easier to be comfortable and stay where you are versus try this new thing, which is weird because people are talking about getting microchips implanted and HUD displays put in their contact lenses. But no, you want me to automate a spreadsheet? No, that's a bridge too far. It's like,
it's a bridge too far.
I can't automate the pulling of data into that spreadsheet. I don't have to pay somebody to do it.
So here,
I can't wrap my head around that.
Like, Mike, you can use this one. Okay. So remember what year it is. Okay. It's 2021. Yeah. Now, so one of the reasons why I wanted to do this is the tipping point has already happened. So this is almost like saying what the best practice operations are and workflow and choices for apps and all that kind of stuff. It's been established and is being established. So the people that aren't they're on the other side, that the 5149 has already happened. So that means that I'm just saying out there, anybody that's on the 49 is wrong.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'll die with that, man. Because I look at, here's the thing that was really hard to get across to people is I call it like operational joy. I made a joke about that and it stuck with me. I'm like, there are people doing the exact same thing you're doing, following these best practices, building these cloud to cloud ecosystems, having like the only interaction humanly that they need to in the business is high level and like also has to do with when a human is necessary. Maybe it's a field service and you need a person on a tool. I get it. There's a lot of things, right? However, now imagine that there are people with smiles on their faces doing all this stuff. And then there's you where it's like fucking hurting work all day, every day. Yeah. And the reason for that is because that's one of those metrics you can't value with data. You know what I mean? Like you can try to formulate some sort of like empathy detector in the culture of the business. There's an app for that, by the way. There are. But what I'm saying is that wouldn't you want to have a good time doing it? Yeah. Like wouldn't and if you're gonna dedicate your life to this deliverable, whether it's a product or a service, wouldn't you want to have a good time until you stop? Like wouldn't you want to have as much of a time as possible that reflects on your human mortal life? Why would that be something you're not thinking of? It's mind-boggling to me. Like as far as I'm concerned, I'll go preach, right? So I got Alyssa, my wife, I love hanging out with her. Aurora, my daughter, I love spending time with them. That's what I see. And I'm here building businesses to like do the same thing. You know, so that like I'm having a great time. Yes, I mean, I'm a thought leader, so I get to have like these crazy commentaries with myself or a potential client or whatever. And I know what I'm saying is useful for them, you know? Right. So that's where but I know also that I don't want to do anything other than influence their decision so that they can have that operational joy that I have and spend time with their family or whatever the hell it is they want to do. Yeah. Right. But it's like, that's the secret. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the secret sauce right there. And it's like, but that's why people have digital animosity, is because those other people have had a smile on their face because they're basically running the sweetest business possible, like weaponized. It's like everything is almost perfect, the perfect business. And then they're in the same industry as that 49.
Yes.
So if you look at that, if you put them, like, that's why I always made a joke about monkey business and robots. If you put them up against each other, they do not want to have a communication with each other, because it's like one person's like got a smile and saying like, I know what my real time net is on my business. And the other one's saying, I have no idea what the fuck is going on.
No, they go,
like,
what's a real time net on business? I don't know.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
sounds interesting. How do I find that
like,
out?
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
it's that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Yep.
So yeah, something you just opened my mind with something, because there is this idea that part of the reason why I think a lot of it is trust, right? Like I think a lot of
Sure.
people don't trust these processes. So it's either lack of knowledge, it's ignorance, it's trust, right? I don't trust that these things can do it. The other thing, honestly, I think is fear, and it's fear in the sense of um, it's fear of being not judged. And I don't know what this is. I'm trying to unwrap or peel back the layers of the
Yeah.
psychological
Unpack.
onion. It
Yeah.
is, I honestly think, and there's a really interesting concept called the Protestant work ethic. I don't know if you've ever heard that before.
Dude, man, I'm gonna have to. Good thing I'm dropping this into Otter so I can just extract all the text.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a really interesting book. I think I'd read it in university, called "The Protestant Work Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism." Right. So it talks about the virtue of hard work in itself. Right. As if we're the early Mennonite farmers or whatever. There's the area that I grew up in was a lot of German Mennonites randomly. Right. So they had this idea that the harder you work, the more that you earn, or the more value you bring, et cetera, et cetera. I think from the time, and you and I are in the same cohort, roughly the same age. I think the entire time
roughly.
we were right, and roughly.
Yeah, I'm older. I'm older. It's fine. You can just call it out. I'm 41.
I didn't want to say
I'm 41.
anything, but
I'm 41 years old.
Yeah. So
I
think that we were brought up, and this is definitely a topic I'd want to talk about again, is the psychological damage and how insidious this type of teachings to children are, that in the sense of you're only as valuable as the amount of effort and work you put into something. It's not tied to the outcome. It's just, are you a hard worker? Are you a quote unquote hard worker? I don't give a shit about somebody being a hard worker. I say, does this person accomplish goals? Do they do what you can work for 10 seconds and do something? And if it is what you said you were going to do, then that's a win. I think we have all been indoctrinated into this system that values hard work, because in the past, they were trying to make laborers, they were trying to make factory workers, they were trying to make people to haul sacks of grain to go do this repetitive thing. It was beneficial to instill those values and that Protestant ethic of work into that, right? And Protestants at the time, they're very ascetic. It's all about, oh well, don't do things from yourself, abstain from liquor, abstain from indulgence and all that stuff, and it's just about hard work and serving God. Boo, fuck that. Yeah, no, it is because, right, it's done such a disservice. And I think it's really, especially in the generation that's older than us, it's almost impossible for them to look at a system that's very simple, that does what they want it to do. They feel guilty. They feel guilty because it betrays that indoctrination that we've had, which is this Protestant ethic of you have to work hard or you're not valuable. Versus what the market actually cares about. Value is objectively judged and assessed by the market. It's not, oh well, this guy put 35 hours into the spreadsheet, so I'm going to give him this money. It's like, no, did the outcome of that 35 hours of the time in that spreadsheet lead to an outcome? If yes, then you get my money. So there's this fundamental disconnection there, I think. Yeah. Now
the only thing I would say is when the art comes in, right? So like, say that the product or service is like somehow an art form to someone, and then that's why it becomes so hard for them to get out of their business, because the art form is that's their painting. That's their, that's their sculpture. That's their whatever.
It's their style. That's all they know how to do. Yeah.
It's their style. But the thing that I wanted to add to that was like that work smarter, not harder is like, it's not a cheat. it's what it is that you have enough historical experience in your mind that what you do is you're shortcutting because you've done it before. So like if you do something stupid in the beginning, you get smarter at the end. So this work smarter, not harder is not like cheating. You know what I mean? Like it's like you need to know there are wrong, smarter decisions.
Yes.
Okay. And so like when you say work smarter, not harder, I mean, well, how? Now, I bet you that you're just saying that because someone said it to you. This regurgitated thing,
Sound
it just buzzwords and shit like that. Like that's why I don't like to say the word like motivated or motivational speaker or there's so many of them because like all it is it's just regurgitation. You're not experiencing anything, and I think that work smarter, not harder is what people that have like achieved some sort of higher value or wealth or free time or whatever, that's what they stick. That's their moral code now. That's like what they say all the time. And then everybody else is like, oh yeah, but I still have to do this hardcore type of work because I'm working. And then I come in and I go like this. Do you see what you just said there? Is it smarter?
Yeah.
Is it smarter?
Yeah.
That's all. It's all. And if you don't know, then you ask, right? And that's why I think that reading, like I read an article a day. And I mean, I used to read a lot more. I don't as much as I used to, but I will say the article a day is like, I just make sure that I'm not the only person thinking of the thoughts in my head. I would like to find someone who has a similar view or a view that's beyond mine, pull back and be like, that's where it's going to go.
Yes.
Like honestly, projecting the future of the human race needs to be on the front of every business owner, because like you're going to have people younger than you building businesses in the same markets, in the same industries. And that they're going to try to succeed just like you did the same time you did it, except the tools they have are from the fucking future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
you're a Roman legionnaire with a spear fighting an SAS warrior with a modern assault rifle. Like it's not even the same, right?
And I think that there's the changeover has happened because a lot of millennials don't want to work anymore. And so that I don't agree with that, but I will say that that's who the majority of the populace is now. And so if they're working smarter, not harder, they are the business community now, right? Like they are the people working. They're the normal. The average normal, sigma mean, whatever you want to call, is a millennial business owner. Let's say. I mean, you could there's tweet. Go ahead, tweet. But I'm just saying that the problem is that we're going to notice this, especially under this quarantine circumstances, pressure cooker, etc. Is that for me the new normal? When anybody asks me, for me the new normal is new protocol. And new protocol is how communication works between business to business. And so not in this, don't even take success. Don't even take the revenue or success or anything in that. Look at how the people communicate. And that's the culture now is protocol communication between business to business. Right? And so you see what I mean? Yeah. So now people don't want to work with a business that doesn't have modern communication techniques. Because the protocol breaks down. So then you're like, oh, they make the deliverable is the best. They do. However, when we work with that business to business, they fuck our bandwidth. They screw up they put too much load on our systems, even though they're the best. They put too much load on our systems. Let's work with those people because those people are using the right formula and the right etiquette to communicate with us so that our bandwidth and their bandwidth are matched. Right. Yeah, so they don't drive my business through the roof by interacting with them. Now, I'd like to say that should scare the shit out of some old business owners right there. If you could imagine that another business was going to choose to work with a different business or buy a product or a service from another business because of that relationship with the protocol of communication. Yeah. That's not even something, that's not marketing, that's not ads, that's nothing.
That is just the truth. Yeah.
That's the core op. Yeah. The way and that's what's so crazy is that is something that would have never popped into a business owner's mind 25 years ago. Yeah, right?
They wouldn't.
Because they'd be like this, well, I got a BlackBerry. You know how cool that was? And I'm like, let me guess, you use the subject line to send comments.
Yeah.
because that's where it breaks down. It's like all those things are just the people adopted certain things that made their life easier, and then they got older, and then now they're the king of their realm. But the other side is that quality of work is actually a thing. Culture, internal culture, is a thing. So you might have the best, might be the best, but you piss me off while you talk to me.
Yeah, I love it.
Right?
So yeah, I love this idea of communication. I think is really important because
it's the one thing that they miss. I think the one thing business owners miss is that people get offended now. Like, that's what I'm glad that it's happened, because it needed to. I would say 10 years ago it was happening, but it wasn't pressed. Now it is. Now it is pressed, and because it's there and it's forward. Now I think it's good to teach someone so that they can have an advantage. So I say that to a business owner from the get-go, and they're like, "Oh, I never thought about that." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, people do now."
Yeah. Well, it is, and it's everything. And like, communication is more than just, oh, well, I asked my client for this thing and they didn't give it to me, or I communicated with this customer. Communication is everything from, for example, in my world, I work in marketing. It's not good enough for me to just come up with a good idea for a marketing campaign, for example. I have to do that, but I also have to convey and communicate that idea to the client so that they buy in and say yes and give me their money and allow us to do it, right? It's not just enough to do the work. The communication is the thing that will determine whether you live or die, right? Because you can have the most incredible product, you can have the most incredible business in the world. If you fail at the communication piece, it does not matter. I'll say this again.
Yep.
If you fail at the communication piece, everything else you do does not matter. And I say this for marketing, especially because I talk about this all the time, right? If you you can have an amazing product. If you fail to communicate effectively, or you don't communicate enough on it, it doesn't matter. People don't care. They will go buy a worse, more expensive product that they've heard of or that they know about, right? So again, the communication issue is so pervasive across all aspects of business. It's interpersonal, right? So it's in between your team, it's within your organization, it's between your organization and other organizations. It's something that's so critical to stay on top of that. It's
the new handshake. It's the new handshake. It's the new handshake. It's like almost like you want to put a seal on your website that says, we function this way, which is like I
can actually talk.
I made a joke. I made a joke that, like, in terms of like better business, I would say, why not best practice operations in the 21st century, right? Because if you were to go to their website and scroll down to the bottom and you saw this icon that said, we follow these guidelines. And I mean, it sounds so crazy, but as a service business, like software as a service business, whatever you want to call the automated method at that level, that's how I would choose who to work with. Because I know that, like, first off, I already know they know what I know. That's number one. Okay. So now I don't have to teach them some sort of operational trick. They just know. Yeah. And then the next thing is that when we talk about things like bandwidth, by the exchange, what happens is they're like, oh, he's looking out for me. See how this works? Business to business can be a team. You know what I mean? Like, it's a team effort. Don't suck and then not return. Right?
Yeah. Exactly. People think it's a zero-sum game, right? Where I win, you lose, instead of trying to find a way. And a lot of businesses use this win-win or win-win-win, and they kind of lip service to this idea, but they don't actually engage in a program or methodology that allows that to happen. It's always like, oh, well, I have to get some. So this, you know what I mean? It's zero-sum mentality.
You know what the corruption there is? Money.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, this is the thing. If there's the monetary transaction, especially if the person feels like that's all that the transaction is, these are hours and outcome problems again, right? Yeah. That if it was like $1,000 for something and they paid that other person, as far as the other the communication relationship, they don't care about running the bandwidth up, because they're like, I gave you $1,000. They're like, you made the sale already, so now I want infinite support bandwidth wise for this, whatever it is, because
you owe me.
I paid you you didn't pay me. And then that breaks it down, and then you just spin up their bandwidth. And then nowadays, a lot of people are vetting these relationships, like myself and the automated method, because I know that a bandwidth problem will break the whole thing. And so I'm not in the business of like under delivering. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so like if I was to say these are recommended things, then they're recommended. If you go in the track of, say, the formula where it's completely supervised remote departments, well, I know for a fact you're going to make money. I know for a fact you're going to make time. I know for a fact how this works, right? The other way it's broken. It's broken, and then it's just like that team. That's what, and you know what? We've gone for an hour here, Mike, and I totally appreciate that.
Let's pick this up.
But we'll do this.
Wednesday.
We'll do this again on Wednesday. But that's the closer. There is that it's not, if everybody's on the same team in a way. Yes, I know there's competition, but I feel like this idea of building modern business will just make everybody feel better, right? Like everybody, the whole planet. Right. And that's what this automatic technology can do, is it actually can adjust how people feel, you know, like, and it's not hard to do. And it's probably cheaper than the way they're doing it right now. Yeah. That's the scariest part. They're just throwing money at things like it's not thought out, you know, or they're not picking the money up that's leaky data that they could convert into money and time. Boom. Okay, we'll talk again. Well, I'm glad that we did this. I'll text you, and then we'll talk again on Wednesday. Okay.
Yeah, perfect, man. Let's do it.
Okay.